We're going to start Chapter 11, which is on pricing. A lot of you may think that this is an easy topic or it's an obvious topic. I mean, pricing is, okay, what somebody pays for something. Well, a lot goes into it. And many companies don't do pricing particularly well. So we're going to look at it, but from a little different perspective. There's a lot of information here. Those of you who are accounting, finance majors, you'll certainly be involved in pricing of products as well as the marketing folks. So this is a really important piece in the class. Also, this is the one area that I have to say is probably the weakest part of marketing. There aren't many people doing research in it. There's not a lot to be read about pricing. But if you think about what pricing is, it's the piece of the puzzle that brings in all your revenue. So it's certainly relevant. The objectives for Chapter 11 explain the importance of pricing and how marketers set objectives for pricing strategy. Describe how marketers use cost, demands, revenue, and the environment to make those decisions. Key pricing strategies and tactics. Look at some things for internet pricing, which is obviously very new and very challenging. And then look at some of the other aspects of pricing that you don't often think about. Okay, what is price? This is a little different here than your textbook's definition of pricing. Price is the economic value the company believes a particular customer is willing to exchange for the value offered by the company at the time of the transaction. Very complex definition. A lot of pieces in there. The implications of this definition: price is not just about money. It's that economic value, and that's more than just the dollars and cents. There's all that value and psychological piece added to that. Different customers are willing to pay different prices for the same good or service. Any of you who go to a Bengals game or a Reds game or a Browns game, or if you're real smart, to a Steelers game, but we won't go there, how much do you pay for some of the refreshments that you buy? Think about how much you pay and how much you would pay if you went to the grocery store and bought the same thing. Same product, different place, different time, so you pay different prices. Customers are purchasing value, which is more than just the good service. And the time of the transaction is important. At different times and in different situations, customers are willing to pay more. Again, let's go to the Reds game, the Steelers game. Or how about when you go to a movie theater? If you go at a matinee, it's usually much less. If you go on a Saturday night, you can pay up to $20 if you go to the concierge section of the theater. So there are a lot of pieces to that definition. This is your textbook definition. Price is the assignment of value or the amount the consumer must exchange to receive the offering. Not quite as complex as the first definition I gave you. It doesn't take in all those additional pieces. Pricing decisions are among the most difficult decisions made by executives, and for the most part, not made carefully. If you think about the impact on your pricing decisions, that brings in the entire revenue for the entire corporation organization. Every price you put on a product is the only way that money comes into the company. When you think about the significance, it's amazing that companies don't take pricing a little more carefully or seriously. If the price is too high, the firm will get less business, maybe. If the price is too low, the firm will make less profit. Obviously, there are times when you price your products higher or lower if you have the strategy to back it up. Pricing objectives. Obviously, the first thing we're going to do when we put together our pricing is decide what is it we're trying to accomplish. Do we want to gain our market share? Are we trying to introduce a brand new product? Is this image enhancement? Are we trying to improve our profitability? Is there something going to competition that suggests we have to do our pricing differently? And is it about customer expectations? If you can think back to 2008, some of you may have been way too young to think back there, but a lot of the companies, when we went into that rather significant recession, A lot of companies chose not to increase prices. They realized that their buyers, their consumers, were struggling to survive on the income that they had, and they made a strategic decision not to increase their prices. Now, that certainly should do something about customer satisfaction. So the decision not to increase prices should have hit that customer satisfaction goal. But think about why you're putting prices on something before you do it. There are essentially three approaches to pricing. You can do cost-based, buyer-based, or competition-based. Most companies do cost-based, and we'll talk a little bit about why. Competition-based, that's not necessarily the best way to do your pricing because you're always following someone else's lead. The best way to do your pricing is buyer-based. See what the marketplace, see what the customer is willing to pay, and then see if you can produce the product or service for that price. Let's look at cost plus pricing. That's where you take your cost and add some percentage to it to come up with your pricing. Why do companies do it? And this is the most prevalent pricing approach that companies use. The advantage, it's very easy. You look at your costs, and there you are. It does set a floor to your price. You're never going to lose money as long as you're covering the cost this way. Disadvantages, and they are enormous. It ignores your customer, ignores your competition. What percentage do you add? Nobody seems to know. And then most companies don't know what their true costs are. This is especially relevant when you look at fixed versus variable cost. And we usually have a rather lively discussion when we talk about this in class because I invariably have many accounting majors in principles of marketing. And it's obvious, well, fixed cost is something that doesn't vary with your level of sales. Variable cost is just that. Those costs that do vary with the level of your production. Okay, and the question I always ask, let's think about summer teaching for faculty. Okay, we essentially have a 9-month contract, but we may choose to teach or not during the summer. So if we choose to teach in the summer, we can teach no classes, 1 class, or 2. And that income that we get is based upon our 9-month salary. Now, is that income that we get over the summer, is that a variable or a fixed cost? Well, I went to some of our accounting professors and asked, and they pretty much concluded that's a variable cost because it can be a 0, 1, or 2. So you can have no income, some income, or more income. And since that is variable, indeed, they decided that was a variable cost. That's the problem you have when you look at trying to classify the cost. Salesperson income. If you have salespeople on a base salary plus some kind of commission plus a bonus, where do you put their income? A lot of companies, unfortunately, lump everything together and make it a fixed cost or a variable cost. It isn't. Part of it's fixed, part of it's variable. But those are the issues that you have to deal with when you're looking at costing and using cost for your pricing. Break-even analysis, that's essentially where you want to make sure you're not going to lose money. So you price it so that you absolutely positively don't lose any money. Okay, the break-even can be calculated in units or dollars. Fixed cost divided by your selling price minus your variable cost, or in dollars, fixed cost divided by 1 minus variable cost divided by the selling price. Realize that when you calculate your break-even analysis, therefore determining your selling price using this formula, again we're back to that fixed cost variable cost problem. We have to somehow come up with our selling price, and we're looking at how much we have to sell by using fixed and variable costs, which may or may not be accurate. So we could be doing this incorrectly. Price elasticity. Basically, if prices go up and demand stays the same, all right, that's inelastic. If price changes cause a great change in demand, all right, that's where it's elastic. You have to think about things like gasoline, and who knows what it's going to cost in the next day, week, month. Do we change anything because costs keep going up? Probably not. Very little. Price elasticity of demand. There again, that price elasticity of demand equals the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. This is an example of where you change the price. Okay, you go from 10 to 9 and calculate your elasticity of demand. Cross elasticity of demand. This is something where you have to look at what happens when prices change and how that affects the demand of other products and services. If products are substitutes, an increase in the price of one will increase demand for the other. That seems relatively straightforward, but most companies don't think about it. If one product is essential for use of a second product and increase the price of one, decreases demand for another. Okay. Markups. When do companies choose to mark up? How do they do it? Well, markups go on throughout your channel of distribution. Markup is the amount added to the cost of the product. And this is a channel of distribution pricing approach. And you look at your gross margin, retailer margin, wholesaler margin, and your list price. Good luck with internet pricing strategies. These change all the time. These are just some examples of how these things are done. Dynamic pricing, online auctions, and Freenomics. Again, I recommend you go and look at some of these things so you can understand what they're doing. This is new product pricing strategies. And this is best understood if you visualize this. A market skimming is where, and this is almost always for new products, but not always. Market skimming is where you have a high price. All right. So you're going to get probably fewer consumers, but maximizing your revenue because the price is high. If you visualize that, that's like skimming over a lake. You're covering not much depth there. Market penetration, you set a low price for a new product. That way you get more people. You may very well get a larger market share. However, if you think about it, these should end up with the same pricing. It's just your approach is different. Customer-based pricing. This is what companies should be doing. This is what everybody in marketing says we should do. Ask a customer what the product is worth and see if they want it for that price. Can the company afford to produce it for that price is the issue. A lot of things people want. They don't want to pay much money for it, but companies can't afford to do that. The bottom line here is do a lot of research on your product before you price it. Go out and do focus groups, do your marketing research, and then see if you can produce it for that. Then you come in and look at your cost. Okay, this is a whole different issue. This is something that probably isn't taught in most classes. That's because most people don't know this formula. They don't even think about this issue. Now, I'm going to regress here for a moment to the sales force. And I was in sales, as you know. And I've heard so many salespeople cut the price in order to get the sale. You should never, ever, ever sell on price cutting unless it is your strategy, unless there are products you have to move, have to get off the market, you have a new product to replace it, then you can take a price cut, or if there's a strategic reason for doing it. But to sell on price cutting just because it's the easiest way to do it is real bad pricing or real bad business model. What you have to think about is if you take a price cut, what do you have to do to get that revenue back that you lost because of the price cut? Think about a restaurant. We have Restaurant Week in Dayton every year, and restaurants offer certain entrees, certain meals at a reduced price. Now let's assume for a moment that the restaurant normally is full, and certainly on Saturday nights in Dayton you can't get into restaurants. So I think that's a safe assumption. Okay, we take a price cut, Restaurant Week, so you have the same products that you normally would sell, probably maybe a change here and there. But how many more people have to come into that restaurant and be served in order to make up for the revenue you lost because of the price cut? That's the situation. You may not be able to make it up if you can't add more tables, get more people in there, turn them over faster, something like that. This is the formula, and very few people know this, for break-even analysis with a price cut. In other words, what do we have to do to make up the revenue lost by your price cut? Okay, now the formula has a negative up there in the numerator, so that's minus your price change. So that minus is part of the formula, divided by the contribution margin plus your price change. Okay? So if we took a 10% price cut, so that's negative paren minus 10, close paren, divided by, let's say your contribution margin is 40, and contribution margin is that portion of your revenue covered by, of your fixed costs that are covered by your revenue. Okay, so your contribution margin could be 40 plus paren minus 10, close paren. So you essentially have a minus and a minus, so that's 10 over 30. So that's a 33% increase in your product or service in order to get back to break even. Not a smart thing to do. Remember this formula because it could save you an awful lot of frustration in the future, especially if you're involved in pricing. Don't let your salespeople take price cuts unless they absolutely have to or unless it's a strategy. That's it for pricing. A very challenging concept in marketing, one that companies don't do well. I suggest to all of you to learn how to do it and help your companies out when you're out there in your first job or forever. And I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.